Today I'm going for a walk in one of the most urban of the urban wildlife refuges in the United States. Join me in the Longmeadow Lake unit of the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge as I walk both the Hogback Ridge Trail and the Bass Ponds Trail. The Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge is in the heart of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area. The Longmeadow Lake unit sits just outside the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport and is a short distance away from the Mall of America. The Hogback Ridge Trail runs between the Old Cedar Avenue Trailhead and the Bass Ponds Trailhead. Today I'm starting at the Old Cedar Avenue Trailhead. The distance to the Bass Ponds Trailhead is about 1.4 miles. It's not shown on the map, but I'll also walk the Bass Ponds Trail. It's a short loop, about 3/4 of a mile. I'll then return to the Old Cedar Avenue Trailhead. This makes the entire walk about 3½ miles. The Hogback Ridge Trail is just one of the trails that you can access from the Old Cedar Avenue Trailhead. The Nokomis Minnesota River Trail, the Bluff Trail, and the Longmeadow Lake Trail are all accessible from this trailhead. And if you cross the Minnesota River on the pedestrian bridge under the highway, you can access the Mendota Trail in Fort Snelling State Park and the Minnesota River Greenway that leads to the Black Dog unit of the Wildlife Refuge. I think it would be hard to find another trailhead with so many different options. Before we head to the Hogback Ridge Trail, I'm going to walk out onto the Old Cedar Avenue Bridge. I'm old enough to remember when you could drive over this bridge. Now, after an extensive rehabilitation, it's strictly a bicycle and pedestrian bridge. Although we're not going to walk to the Minnesota River today, it is a little over ½ mile from the trailhead across this bridge to the river. The bridge is a good spot to check for wildlife and waterfowl in Longmeadow Lake. I saw a video that someone had posted online of river otters in Longmeadow Lake. I believe it was taken from this bridge. The Fish and Wildlife Service indicates that river otters are thriving in this refuge. I know this bridge is also a favorite spot for birders. Well, it doesn't look like we'll see any river otters today. I'm here in the middle of the day, so this might not be the best time. If you come to the Old Cedar Avenue Bridge trailhead, be sure to take a walk out onto this bridge, even if you are not walking the trails that cross the bridge. Keep an eye out for wildlife and waterfowl. Maybe you'll see river otters or some of the other animals that have been spotted around Longmeadow Lake. The term lake in Longmeadow Lake confuses some people. Longmeadow Lake is a shallow, floodplain, wetland, or marsh. It is created by the overflow or flooding of the Minnesota River. Historically, the Minnesota River floods in the spring. Lately, Minnesota has been seeing more frequent and intense rainfalls, so the river is flooding in summer too. Longmeadow Lake does have open water, but it's interspersed among the bulrushes, grasses, and other emergent vegetation. If you have the time, take a short walk from the Old Cedar Avenue Bridge trailhead south on the Bluff Trail to the boardwalk. It's a good place to get a close-up look at Longmeadow Lake. Depending on the time of year, you may also see a lot of the waterfowl that frequent the refuge. From the parking lot, It's only a quarter-mile out to the viewing platform at the end of the boardwalk. This is the first time I've been back to this trailhead since they completed the rehabilitation of the bridge and the reconstruction of this trailhead. The trailhead now has restrooms and a fill station for water bottles. However, they were not open on the day I visited. I assume that's because of the pandemic. They did have portable toilets in the parking lot. A good portion of the Hogback Ridge Trail is very wide, since it is an old service road. That makes it easy to practice physical distancing. It is also very flat. There is not much change in elevation. Because we are in the middle of an urban area, parts of the trail can be very noisy, both from the traffic on the new Cedar Avenue Bridge and from the planes as they take off and land at the airport. When you walk the Hogback Ridge Trail, you are basically walking from pond to pond to pond. We're now at our first pond. It's called Old Cedar Pond. The Department of Natural Resources occasionally stocks the pond with bluegill and crappies. Although there is a fishing pier on the pond, the Department of Natural Resources, according to its website, does not think many people fish this pond. That might make it a good place to try your luck. When the Minnesota River overflows and floods Longmeadow Lake, it also floods this pond, so you never know what species might be lurking beneath the surface. The Hogback Ridge Trail narrows as it passes under the new Cedar Avenue Bridge or Highway 77. Since bicyclists can also use this trail, you do have to be alert for them, especially in this part of the trail. The only real elevation change along the trail is when it emerges from under the northbound lanes of the highway. There's a few steps until you reach the old service road again. We're now on the other side of the highway and at the second pond along the trail. This pond is called Pond C. It's part of the stormwater detention system for the city of Bloomington. It collects the stormwater from the urban area above the bluff. It also helps trap sediment and pollutants in the stormwater before they reach Longmeadow Lake. When I turned around to look at Longmeadow Lake, I noticed what I believe are trumpeter swans and their cygnets. This video camera does not have a telephoto lens, so they're hard to see. I filmed this walk near the end of July, which is when adult trumpeter swans are flightless. My understanding is that the population of trumpeter swans in Minnesota has been increasing over the years, and that they are no longer listed as threatened. We're now at our next two ponds. This pond is called Youth Pond. On the other side of the trail is Hogback Ridge Pond. Both of these ponds are in the FIN program, or Fishing in the Neighborhood. The purpose of this program is to increase angling opportunities close to where people live, such as in an urban area like this. The program also introduces beginning anglers to sport fishing and promotes the awareness and stewardship of our aquatic habitats. Like the old Cedar Pond, the Department of Natural Resources also stocks these ponds. According to their website, you should find bluegill, crappie, largemouth bass, channel catfish, and northern pike in these ponds. The shoreline of the Youth Pond is wooded, so most of the fishing is from the pier in the pond. The Hogback Ridge Pond does not have a pier, so all the fishing is from the shore. Fishing is allowed within this National Wildlife Refuge, but only from a pier or from the shore. Watercraft, either motorized or non-motorized, are not allowed. Bird watching is also very popular in the Wildlife Refuge. and especially along this trail. The refuge is one of the largest and most important bird habitats in the upper Midwest. It's considered one of the best birding areas in the Twin Cities. Over 225 species of songbirds, waterfowl, and shorebirds visit the refuge throughout the year. Since the refuge is on the Mississippi River Flyway, many species stop here during their spring and fall migrations. More than 100 species nest in the refuge, including bald eagles and peregrine falcons. The floodplain forest along Longmeadow Lake is one of the nesting locations for bald eagles. Even during the winter, about 24 species can be found here. In addition to birds, the refuge also plays a critical role in the life cycle of the monarch butterfly. During their fall migration, you'll likely find monarch butterflies here. The refuge is on their flight path to Mexico. Hogback Ridge Pond is not a natural pond. It was originally a gravel pit. Today it's part of the stormwater treatment system for the urban area above the bluff. I believe the water from the storm sewer enters Skimmer Pond first. Any debris or trash in the stormwater is trapped here and removed before the water flows into Hogback Ridge Pond. Eventually, the stormwater will be discharged from Hogback Ridge Pond into Longmeadow Lake. We're finally at the last pond along the Hogback Ridge Trail. This wetland is called Hogback Ridge Marsh. I believe it's part of the stormwater treatment system like Skimmer Pond and Hogback Ridge Pond. I think it functions as an overflow for the Hogback Ridge Pond. The overflow would pass through Hogback Ridge Marsh before entering Longmeadow Lake. We've now reached the end of the Hogback Ridge Trail. The Bass Pond's Trailhead is just up the hill. It has a parking lot, but no restrooms or water. If you don't mind walking up and down the hill, this trailhead is closer to the Hogback Ridge Pond if you're coming here to go fishing or birding. Before returning to the old Cedar Avenue Bridge trailhead, I'm going to walk the Bass Ponds Trail. This short trail loops through the site of the fish rearing ponds the Isaac Walton League built in the 1920s. This site is now quite overgrown, but if you look carefully, you can still see what remains of the Minnow, Big Bass, and Little Bass ponds and the water control structures. In the 1920s, overfishing, especially for largemouth and smallmouth bass, had nearly eliminated the fish from local lakes. To help replenish the fish, the Minneapolis chapter of the Isaac Walton League, a grassroots conservation organization, selected this site for a fish rearing operation. This site was ideal because it had a continuous supply of clean, cold, spring-fed water from Ike's Creek. This is Ike's Creek. The Minnow Pond is behind the control structure in the back. Ike's Creek is less than a mile long. It starts a short distance from the Mall of America, flows down a ravine, through the Bass Ponds, and then empties into Longmeadow Lake. Over the years, it's brought a lot of silt or sediment down from the urban areas at the top of the bluff. That silt has now filled Minnow Pond. Around 1926, the Isaac Walton League constructed the ponds. I believe they dug all the ponds by hand and then planted cottonwood trees to stabilize the banks of the ponds. They built a small dam at Minnow Pond to capture the water from the creek. Using a series of diversion pipes, they distributed the water to the other ponds. Control structures managed the water level in the ponds. For the next 30 years, they raised fish in the ponds and then released them into local lakes. This is Big Bass Pond. The control structures that distribute the water among the ponds are now old and failing. They provide little capability to manage the water level in the pond anymore. Like Minnow Pond, Big Bass Pond suffers from heavy siltation. Revegetation is also nearly eliminating any open water in the pond. Over the 30 years of operation, the Izaak Walton League raised 2.5 million fish in these ponds, mostly largemouth and smallmouth bass, but also sunfish, crappies, and walleyes. Once the Izaak Walton League stopped raising fish here, the ponds were neglected. When the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge was established in 1976, these ponds became part of the refuge. We're now going to cross over Ike's Creek again. In the 1920s, native brook trout filled the creek. Historical records show that the creek supported 6-inch to 10-inch brook trout until the 1940s. Then they disappeared. About 15 years ago, the Department of Natural Resources and its partners started restoring the creek above Minnow Pond. They reconstructed the stream bed and the way it meandered down from the bluff. Then they released brook trout fingerlings back into the creek. The goal is to once again have a self-sustaining population of brook trout in the creek. I believe one of the priorities of the Wildlife Refuge is to also restore this lower portion of Ike's Creek, similar to how the portion above Minnow Pond was restored. That would enable the brook trout to use the entire length of the creek. Little Bass Pond, our last stop along the Bass Ponds Trail, has the same issues as Big Bass Pond: siltation, revegetation, and failing water control structures. Even though the bass ponds are now degraded from what they originally were, I still think they're a tribute to the pioneering conservation efforts of the Izaak Walton League. Thanks for going on this walk with me. I hope this walk inspires you to stay both physically active by walking trails like this one, and to stay mentally active by continuing to learn new things. If something I said sparked your interest, check out the description of this video. I included links to some resources so you can learn more about the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge, the Fishing in the Neighborhood program, bird watching in the Minnesota Valley, the Izaak Walton League, trout, and other topics. If you like this type of content and want to see more from Elder Trekker, click the subscribe button. If you want to be notified when I upload a new video, click the bell icon. And if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. That really helps this channel. Thanks for watching. Until the next video, I hope to see you along the trails.